A meeting will take place in Boston next Thursday on service needs along the Green Line. The main concerns are Green Line capacity, but also meeting the cost of improvements. The meeting is being organized by elected officials from Boston and surrounding communities. Two of them are with us tonight: the state senator from Belmont, who also represents Allston and Brighton, Will Brownsberger, and the state representative for parts of the South End and the Fenway, Byron. Thank you both very much for being with us.
It's always good to be here.
I want to start with Senator Brownsberger. I guess the aim here is not just to talk about how do we keep it from getting worse, but to make it better.
Well, that's it. Everybody knows that there's a maintenance backlog on the T, that there are parts that are old, trains that are old, tracks that are old, power systems that are old, and that creates a risk of breakdown, and that's why we have breakdowns on the T. And so we know that we need to fix those. We need to bring it up to a state of good repair. But what people aren't talking about enough is the need to actually increase the capacity of the T. More trains running on the same tracks so that we can actually carry more people. And there's so many places within the system and at certain times of day where people just can't get on a train. And that tells you that there's a lot of latent demand that, if we had the capacity, people would be using it more. And we're encouraging people to get on the T, but a lot of places on the T, you can't get on the T. And the Green Line is one of those places especially that we need to be concerned about.
Representative Rushing, talking about the Green Line capacity in your district, and I'm thinking mainly here about along Huntington Avenue near the Longwood Medical area. Why is capacity such a big deal?
Capacity is a big deal because we're being successful in one thing, and that is getting more and more businesses coming into Boston and having some of our major economic forces expanding. That means schools, of course, in Boston, colleges, and the whole medical industry and sector of our economy. And they are expanding, and there are a lot more jobs there, and people need to get to those jobs. What the options for the people who run those institutions is to try to get people generally they have given up on the MBTA, and they're coming up with options of having people get to the outskirts of Boston and then bus them in. These are all the shuttle buses that we see on the streets around here, going to the various institutions in Longwood and other places. And we are not taking advantage of the public transit infrastructure that we have right now, and by taking advantage, I mean we have a good chunk of it done already, right? We don't have to dig any more tunnels, but we need to be using that system in new and smart ways and with up-to-date technology. I think that, and the other interesting thing, of course, for those of us who represent downtown neighborhoods in Boston, is every time we have a proposal for building more residential housing, which is usually luxury housing, unfortunately, but every time we have a proposal to build more luxury housing and we say, well, how are the people going to get there? They say, oh, they're going to use the T. But the T doesn't change. But that residential housing is being built, and we need to make sure we are taking a hard look at expanding this system.
Senator, if you put a whole bunch of new trolleys on the line that don't break down, you could still have more room, but you might have more congestion too. So how do you really make this capacity work?
Well, I think the key is to switch from predominantly two-car trains to predominantly three-car trains during the rush hour. We have very few three-car trains running, and the T's power system is not actually capable of running a lot of three-car trains. You'll blow the fuses if you put that many more cars on there, but that doesn't mean. But you can increase the throughput if we had the rolling stock and the power system that would support it by having three-car trains. And so that would be a substantial increase in capacity right there.
I just want to remind people of some history. One of the problems with the T in the past, it's not true now, but one of the problems with the T in the past is when they had problems with whole chunks of the Green Line system, they just closed it down. And so we have a system, and the letters for the system start B, C, D. What happened to A? A, of course, existed, and A went out to Watertown. You could get on a trolley in Park Street and go out to Watertown. They closed that whole system down, and because they were having problems with the system, and they couldn't figure out a way of getting the funds or have the will to do the investment that was needed.
By the way, until recently, they had shut down part of the E line, I think, on
Well,
weekends.
and that's right. That's back, but but for other reasons, the E line doesn't go all the way out the way it was. We used to go out to Arbor Way,
I remember.
and now it stops. It stops before that. But there used to be, even to go even further back, and people were arguing that this abandoned tunnel should be opened instead of doing the Silver Line, because there was a trolley that came down Tremont Street and came into Boylston and then Park Street. And so instead of, I think we have to have everybody shift to a new way of looking at what is really an important resource, though it's underfunded, it is under-technologied, and using that resource to get more people using public transportation. I think the goal in all of this discussion that we have, hopefully in the next several months, about funding for public transportation has to include how do we expand public transportation in a way that more people want to use it.
Senator, the T has its big deficit. The state has, the state budget overall is something like a $1 billion deficit. So how can you talk about getting more money?
Well, that is the conversation that we know we all need to have. I mean, we can talk about cost control, and the legislature has been very focused on that for the past few years. And healthcare costs, pension costs. We just had a press conference with the governor this morning about post-employment pension, healthcare benefits. So there's a bunch of different things we've done to control the costs, and we've also had the cost control by the T management itself. I mean, they're providing expanded service over what they did 10 years ago with the same or slightly fewer employees. So there's been a big focus on that. But when you start actually talking about catching up with that maintenance backlog, everybody recognizes, every person who's looked at the situation says, we can't manage or cut our way out of a tough decision, which is, yeah, we do have to raise some more money. Now, how's that going to happen? There is a consensus that it needs to happen, but there's a lot of ideas on the table, and there isn't a consensus on which are the right ideas. So that's what the conversation that's going to go on over the next 6 months. And my biggest concern in that conversation is that we set our goals high enough to actually improve the system as opposed to just keeping it afloat.
We just have a little time here, but we should let people know when this meeting is going to be happening on Thursday.
Thank you. That's this Thursday, the 17th, at 6 p.m. at the Boston Public Library.
All right. Thank you both very much, Senator Will Brownsberger and Representative
Thank
Byron
you.
Rushing.